All right. Let us know in the chat if the audio is fixed. Looks like we're good now. Um, are we audible? Sorry, you guys. All right, great. All right. Thanks, you guys, for coming by. We're having a discussion tonight on is there evidence for God? We have TJump, Skylar Fiction, Greg, and Praise I Am That I Am. And we're going to get started here in a minute. If this is your first time by the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Hit like on this video if you like these types of discussions. We want to make sure everybody has a fair and equal playing ground here to have our discussion, and everyone gets to be heard. Now, with that, we're going to start with 6 minutes for each person. That's 12 minutes per side. We're going to start with the Christians to kind of give an opening and let everybody know where they stand. Then we'll kick it over to the other side. Then we will jump to open discussion and then to a Q&A. So if you have any questions, just shoot them into the live chat, and I will save those till the end. Also, if you have super chat, we'll kick it to the top of the list. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. Praise, you want to start us off, or Greg?
It's up to Greg, you know.
You can start, Praise.
Yeah, so I appreciate Modern Day for having me and this opportunity to have a discussion with Skylar TJump on evidence of God. But my channel is mostly focused towards apologetics, defending the Christian faith, and so I plan on providing some evidence for God tonight. And we'll see how it all goes. Thank you.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Greg.
Aren't you going first?
We're doing introductions here?
Or? Go ahead and we'll just kick it over to you to start us off with an opening statement. Praise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right, cool.
So this tonight's debate is on evidence for God, and the contents of this presentation starts out with atheists disqualify themselves from being arbiters of evidence. The next part is evidence for God and PSI. The last part is evidence for God and documented miracles. So the first off, why atheists cannot be arbiters for evidence of God. Atheists have no basis to qualify or disqualify something as being evidence for God because they don't even know what constitutes evidence for God in the first place. What convinces them is ultimately unfalsifiable, therefore cannot be used as grounds to dictate whether something is evidence for God or not. Scientists merely conduct experiments and record data, so they cannot be used as arbiters of evidence for God. Since the data requires extrapolation and interpretation, there must be an objective framework in place to justify something is evidential. And we have these buzzwords, evidence, proof. But here's the thing, evidence presupposes an objective metaphysic because it is conceptual in nature and axiomatic epistemologically. Therefore, through process of elimination by virtue of syllogism, atheists unwittingly negate themselves from grounding such axioms as evidence or proof, because science only deals with approximations and probabilities. In order to measure probabilities and approximations empirically, there must be an objective standard in which results are weighed against. Since the materialist worldview cannot account for distinguishing objectively true propositions from false ones, therefore only the Christian worldview can. Now I'm going to get into parapsychology's evidence for God. The peer-reviewed paper pictured below provides extensive evidence for PSI, known as parapsychology. What does PSI consist of? The definition straight from Webster's dictionary is as follows: a field of study concerned with the investigation of evidence for the paranormal, telepathy, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis. The paranormal, by definition, means supernatural, or what is beyond science. As T.N. Meyer lays out in his book, Jesus Christ, Super Psychic, a bold explanation of biblical mysteries from the viewpoint of parapsychology, Jesus is not only the only religious character to champion parapsychology by exhibiting discarnate spirits, clairvoyance, clairaudience, precognitions, apparitions, apports, dematerialization, out-of-body experiences, and influences from the etheric realm. But he's not only that, he's the only one historically to do that. However, what's incredible is the amount of evidence for PSI is paralleled with the field of general psychology, which means there's thousands upon thousands of papers as outlined by the paper shown below, which is called the Experimental Evidence for Parapsychological Phenomenon, a review. And here it is. I put it right there. And now here's a clip from Dr. Walter von Lacadu, who is a PhD psychologist and physicist, speaking about an incident in parapsychology where someone is attacked by an apparition on TED Talk. So I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to blow it up. There we go.
Very fierce poltergeist, and the lady solved it. Well, I instructed her at the telephone, and she wrote me an email and described how she got rid of the poltergeist simply by knowing what I just told you. So can we get?
I think that I can make the fortunate report that the poltergeist has vanished. My first assumption after the telephone conversation was that the house does not like me, and I do not like the house. But since the phenomenon did not disappear, I thought that this cannot be the problem. And besides, this would have been a known problem. When I looked through my notes, I found that all objects which were destroyed had a relation to my mother. To explain this, I must say that my mom and I had a very close relationship. With no other person I have ever experienced that the line was occupied when I tried to phone her because she also tried to phone me. The first poltergeist phenomenon happened the night after Mother's Day this year. I was kicked by someone in bed. In this moment, I thought, "Mom, help me." The same night, a vase on the table broke in 4 parts. It contained flowers for her. The photo that bounced against me showed Mom's dog. The flower pots that fell down were from her, and also the cupboard. The marble table which broke when the bookshelf tilted also had a relation to my mother. During these days, we had enough time to talk to each other, and my feeling that she was not well during the last few months was confirmed. Last year, she tried to commit suicide and had told me that she was desperate. She tried to move to us, but she saw no possibility to do this. Now we try to find a home for her. I am rather sure that this was the solution. Well, if you ask me now why I didn't find it earlier, I don't know. Yet it was so obvious.
Thank you. Now,
And then lastly, is miracles as evidence of God? Below is actual footage of a miracle of a guy named Dwayne Miller, who has provided documentation that he was seen by over 63 specialists and their teams, totaling over 200 doctors, to be treated for incurable laryngitis. This case has been cited as a miracle.
To say that every single person will always be healed because Jesus died on the cross is a misinterpretation of Scripture. Not true. Won't work. Isaiah 53 doesn't talk about physical healing. I'm sorry. That's just not the context. And to impress that there causes a misinterpretation of Scripture. That's wrong. On the other hand, to say that, since we don't have anything after the book of Acts, that miracles ended at the book of Acts and they never happen again is equally as wrong. Because you have put God in a box both ways. And he doesn't want to be in the box. So the psalmist says, I'm excited. Bless the Lord, O my soul. One of his benefits is he heals all of my diseases. And in verse 4, he says, and he redeems my life from the pit. Now, I like that verse just a whole lot. I have had, and you have had in times past, pit experiences. We've all had times when our life seemed to be in a pit, in a grave. And we didn't have an answer for the pit we find ourselves in. And I don't understand this right now.
So there it is, an actual miracle. His voice just changed right in the middle of a sermon. And with that, the rest belongs to my partner.
All right, thanks so much for that praise. We'll kick it over to Greg. Let me just get a switch back here. All right. One sec. Let's remove that. There we go. Sorry about
All right. Should I just start now?
that. Yeah. Go ahead and start. I just got to fix the clip real quick.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, go ahead and start, Greg, whenever you get ready, buddy.
All right, thank you. So first off, I'd just like to say thank you to James for organizing this, and thank you to Converse for moderating it. So I'm really excited for this debate. You know, the question of whether or not God exists is one that has plagued humanity for thousands of years. Philosophers and theorists have all been at each other's throats from it. So, you know, I'm here today to present a case for why I believe it's probably the most likely explanation for the relevant data. If that changes to another picture, then I'm more than happy to adjust my worldview. So the key here really isn't that it's certainty that a God exists, but rather it is the most likely, option here, the most likely, explanation for all the data. So first off, before we start, we need to make one thing clear. We need to try and not do what is called a God of the gaps fallacy. That is where you take, just any old supernatural phenomena and, scientific data or gaps in scientific theory and insert a supernatural explanation for it. That's a problem. So, take intelligent design, for instance, right? I think that suffers from the God of the gaps fallacy, where you have unexplained, you have like a hole in evolution, and then you put a God into it. We're going to try not to do that. So I have two arguments today. One is the Leibnizian cosmological argument and the moral argument. So the Leibnizian cosmological argument is essentially premise one: everything that exists has an explanation of its existence. This is commonly known as the principle of sufficient reason, and it would be ad hoc to attack it because you'd also have to accept it in order to attack it, because people generally accept that there is sufficient reason for the logical conclusions that we form. The second premise is the universe exists. That would probably be, if we're going by a rational discourse here, that's probably the most reasonable option to go by, if we're trying to get anywhere, really. The third premise is, therefore, the universe has an explanation of its existence, since it exists. Premise 4, if the universe has an explanation of its existence, that explanation would most likely be a deity known as God. The reasons for this would be that, for instance, the universe, I argue, is contingent. I have a few papers on it which demonstrate that, and due to that, and since and we have a contingent set of things that all causally explain each other, and that can't go on infinitely due to various problems with the infinity, which I'm happy to go over in this discussion, and therefore it must be a necessary explanation for the contingent explanations. And I would argue that this explanation is more or less necessary agent causation would follow instead of event causation. So I would argue that it's an agent. And that's more or less what would generally be considered a God. It's also non-physical because it can't be made of any substances we know of in the universe, since it would be made of contingent substances, therefore not making it necessary. And this is, more or less closer to what people generally accept, as a God. And the second argument I would have is the moral argument, which is that morality is a rational enterprise. I think you both would agree with this, which is that if you guys are cognitivists, I have a few arguments. If you guys disagree with that, I'm more than happy to go over it. That moral realism is true, as has been demonstrated through something called the argument from epistemic realism. I'm also happy to go over that throughout the debate. And the fact that the moral problems and disagreements amongst humans are too much for us to assume that these are grounded in humanity. And therefore they're grounded in a necessary rational source. And that source is also what we generally consider to be a God. And yet those two are my arguments. I think those are I think God would not be the utmost, necessary, must be the solution to it, because some of these premises might not be true. For instance, we might find out that actually moral realism is not intuitive. We might find out that the universe is actually necessary if any papers come through. And if that's the case, then these arguments would be invalid and unsound. But other than that, yeah, that would pretty much conclude my opening statement. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for that. Now we'll just kick it over to the other side.
Sure, I'll start. So everything Prez said was bullcrap. Atheists can differentiate imagination from reality perfectly fine. It's not a problem. You don't need an absolute certainty. You don't need grounds for knowledge. Prez just doesn't understand the philosophy behind it. Not a problem. Parapsychology is a quack science. It's not indicative of the supernatural at all. It's just indicative of an unknown natural thing. That's it. There's no evidence that it's connected to a God. They're just unexplained phenomenon, which is why the vast majority of experts in every academic field reject it. Once they publish papers that can actually demonstrate it exists, that's perfectly fine. Until then, it's just a God of the gaps, as Gregory accurately pointed out. We can't just add God of the gaps and here's something that can't explain, therefore God, not evidence. The video of the guy getting his voice back, yeah, that's happened to me in like 3 different videos where I lost my voice and got it back. There's nothing special about that at all. It's just when your voice dries out, especially when you're crying like he was, the liquid covers the back of your voice and makes it easier to talk. Not a miracle. Common practice in every science. We know it, which is why that was never published in any academic paper on parapsychology. It's not evidence of miracles. It's just a guy got his voice back. Nothing special. The 2 arguments that Gregory listed, the Leibnizian cosmological argument, PSR is rejected by most philosophers. It's a highly controversial principle. It really isn't accepted at all, except by theologians. That's it. So it doesn't actually have any application whatsoever. We agree that the universe had a beginning, and that beginning was probably a natural beginning by the consensus of every expert in every field of physics, cosmology, everything related to the universe. So you don't need a God for that at all. God doesn't even work for that. And if you think God does work that, we can just apply the same solution to a natural universe and it works better. So literally doesn't work for God at all. Moral argument, I agree in moral realism, unlike Skylar. Skylar is not a moral realist. So, but that doesn't indicate a God either. You can have moral realism without a God. Vast majority of philosophers are moral realists and atheists. You don't need a God for that either. So even if moralism was true, doesn't indicate a God. But I would like to hear what Gregory's argument was, the epistemic something or another. So I'll hand it over to Skylar.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have too much more to say. I think Tom kind of hit right the nail on the head there. Yeah, I there's a couple things I found odd about Praise's argument. We're having a general God debate, and basically we made an argument for the Christian God in so many ways. That really wasn't what the debate topic is. It's what I wanted to debate, but anyways. So the other thing is, yeah, people change their voices. Yeah, people can pretend. We have people that make a living literally doing different voices for people. I felt that was really just more of a video about preaching to somebody. Yeah, I go with paranormal as BS also. Yeah, precept's just kind of boring, right? Just because the theist is going to have an empty claim in the end. They're just going to say that God gives them special knowledge of some form, an undemonstratable claim, and then they're going to try to hold the non-believer to that standard and say, well, you can't, account for anything, which, yeah, I don't really find too compelling. Yeah, I'm more interested to kind of hear some stuff Greg had said. I'm not a moral realist, as Tom has already articulated. So I didn't find that argument very compelling. But yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. I don't really have much to say.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead and kick it over to the open discussion. If that's okay with both sides, and we'll get right into it.
Actually, I'd like to start with Greg. So if Greg could,
sure.
He said he had an argument for moral realism. I'd like to hear that.
All right, yeah. So my argument for moral realism would be the argument from epistemic realism, which is that moral facts behave in similar ways to epistemic facts, such as like an epistemic duty. Let's just say is not strawmanning each other, not misrepresenting positions, things like that. And you ought not to in order to follow logical principles, and it's similar in some ways to moral facts. So, epistemic oughts and moral oughts, since they're almost identical in how they operate, I would say that moral realism would probably most likely be true based on this fact. This is not the best argument, honestly. I think a better argument would be the argument from intuition, which is that since morality is intuitive, and I have a few papers on that. Since it's intuitive, then the burden would be on the moral skeptic to provide an argument, to provide a defeater against the intuition. Those would be my two main arguments. I don't think moral realism is the best supported theory, but I think it's most probable based on the arguments.
Yeah. So your first argument doesn't work, even if moral facts work in the same way as epistemic facts. That doesn't mean they're objectively true. It's just a system of language. So epistemic facts are just a system we've made up in our heads to do things. So if you want to be logical, you follow a system of logic. That doesn't mean logic is true. Logic isn't true. It's just a descriptive system.
Well, it's true. It would be objective, right? So
no. So logic isn't true. Logic is used to describe reality. So if it describes reality, then it's true because the sentence describes reality. But logic itself isn't true. It's
right.
Not a thing.
Yes.
So morality is the same thing. Morality isn't true. It's just given your argument. It's just like the laws of logic. They're descriptive facts. You can use them as describing actions people do, but that doesn't mean that they're correct. That you couldn't just change the definition to make them a different definition.
Right. And I wouldn't argue that morality is necessarily true, depending on your definition of true, obviously. But I would assume that morality would operate in the exact same sense as you have described logic, which is, based on a system, right? It's true based on, a set of preconditions that we have. So we use logic in order to deduct statements. When we make arguments, against someone, we make sure not to, we follow certain things like epistemic duties in order to go across that, truth claim or. Yeah.
Right, but that has nothing to do with moral realism. So moral realism is the claim that moral statements are true independent of opinion. So they're objective. And for them to be objective, they correspond to something in reality independent of our opinions, which is what objective is. That cute dog. So in order for morality to be objective, or for logic to be objective, that has to correspond to something other than a system we've made up. So even if the way that morality functions is similar to the way that epistemic laws of logic function, they're just something we made up to describe reality. They don't correspond to anything independent in reality, so they wouldn't be real in that case. It wouldn't qualify as moral realism just based off of that argument.
All right, all right. Well, as far as logic goes, there are certain laws of logic that philosophers and logicians generally accept, like modus ponens, things like that, deductively arguing from things, syllogisms, things like that, which are generally accepted to be objectively true. So if you have a premise like if X then Y, X therefore Y, like we accept these kinds of laws of logic, and therefore in that sense they are objective.
No, so the fact that they objectively describe something that is true doesn't make them true. So that's not how it works.
Say objectively describe something, then that is essentially
No. Again, so for example, take the transitive property, just A equals B, B equals C, C equals A. Dogs are chickens, chickens are cats, therefore cats are dogs. You can have the valid form without having a sound, true argument. So the fact that the argument can be valid, like a valid logical form, has nothing to do with truth. Truth is the soundness part. So
I agree.
The systematic functioning of the epistemic principles is the same as the moral principles, just like it's the same with C++ or any formal language. That doesn't make them true. For them to be true, you have to show that it corresponds to something in reality. The premises are sound. So just showing that the validity of the moral framework works the same way as the validity of logical framework doesn't tell us anything about moral realism. Moral realism would be the soundness part.
Yeah. So basically, look, I would accept that. Yeah, it's just because something is logically true, then that doesn't mean the premises are sound. But you just agreed that logical principles are objective and can be used, because I wasn't talking about the soundness of the premises. I wasn't just saying, just because you can construct a logically valid argument, but you did accept the objectivity of logical validness. So
moral realism is the soundness part. Moral realism is that it has to be true about reality in some way. So it has to be real, not just follow a formal structured language. That doesn't work for realism.
And I kind of wanted to change gears real quick, because all I seen was a bunch of hand waving and pivoting off of my experimental data with peer reviews. So you can't just say, "Oh, it's not valid because I don't like it." That's basically what I heard from Skylar in TJump. So would you please address the backstory of Dwayne Miller? He's seen over 260 doctors, 90 specialists. It wasn't, a sore throat. No, Tom. He actually was diagnosed with
nothing about that is miraculous. There's all kinds of healings all the time. Nothing about that is
no. You don't get to shift the goalposts here.
No,
that's a miracle by definition.
No, there's nothing miraculous about that. It happens all the time.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it
does. No one that was diagnosed with an incurable laryngitis
all the time.
No, it doesn't.
Literally
It does not.
Thousands of times.
Prove it then. Prove it.
I can prove it very simply. You can
go ahead right now. Prove it right now.
It's literally
prove it right now.
Prove
it right now.
Google the word spontaneous remission. It happens all the time.
That's an opinion. I want
proof. No. Praise. This is a fact known in every scientific field. Spontaneous remission is a common feature in medical diagnosis. We know it all the time. Praise. You being ignorant of science isn't a problem.
Then prove it. Let's see it. I want to see a citation.
The word spontaneous remission. It's like saying Google the words cancer. This is so well known in the field. You can just look up the word. Spontaneous.
No, vocal cords. His vocal cords were completely.
It doesn't matter.
No, he had completely mangled.
People have spontaneous remission of cancer, of stage 5 cancer. It doesn't matter. Like, nothing you're saying is spectacular.
Well, then I would also say it's a miracle from God as well. That you need to demonstrate how that's naturalistic in any type of way or fashion or form. Which you don't. You're just claiming that it's a scientific. It's a miracle. Period.
No, nothing about that is a miracle. So again, that's you.
That is a miracle.
Praise. That's you doing what Greg said of doing a God of the gaps, where you're saying here is something we can't explain, therefore God. It happens all the same. Wait, praise. So it happens. Praise. This happens at the same rate to everyone all across the world in all cultures and all religions. It's just a biological process. There's nothing special.
Let's see the citation for that. I want to see
spontaneous remission. Just go to PubMed, type in spontaneous remission, you'll get about 10,000 results. Not a problem. This is a well-known phenomenon. Literally nothing about that is special.
No, not in this case. This case was completely different.
There are significantly more rare, deadly cases that get spontaneous remission. There's nothing special about this at all. You literally just posted a common feature of things that we know about all over the world and said it was miraculous. No,
because you need to show that spontaneous remission is even possible with laryngitis. So I think
we have it with stage 5
lung
cancer.
That's a straw man argument.
There's literally no disease.
Who said cancer and laryngitis are on the same level medically? You need to demonstrate that.
Cancer is harder to cure than laryngitis.
Claim. That's an opinion.
Oh my God, praise. There's
You're just hand waving it away.
You don't understand the medical field here.
Here's the problem that I'm having is that, I mean, you played, it was on the screen for like a 30 seconds or a minute of what you were articulating. Like, this would have been something that you probably should have sent us ahead of time if you wanted us to really get in depth, like research about this particular thing and try to debunk it. But if you just present maybe a minute worth of information and I'm only getting what I'm seeing there on the screen, like, how would you expect us to go into detail any further? I think what Tom's saying is, is true. Like, I don't think we need to, but at the same time, like, you're wanting us to debunk something that you haven't even clearly articulated. You haven't clearly even argued. You're kind of burden shifting in a way without even giving us any prep on this specific thing. And really it's just God of the gaps. You're just a God of the gaps argument. You can't explain it. Therefore it's God. But like I said, we don't have enough information to even argue with it at this point.
No, he was treated for incurable laryngitis. It was incurable. That's what they
I don't know that.
classified him as.
Praise. When they say incurable, it means we don't have a medical cure. It doesn't mean it cannot be cured. You're just ignorant of the field here. I just Googled laryngitis spontaneous remission. I'm looking at PubMed. There's 10 different cases. It's 10% of all population has this.
No, that's general laryngitis. Now you're equivocating.
That's not what it means.
Yeah,
that's
you
not
are.
what it means, Praise. It does not say general laryngitis. It says incurable right there in the papers. You're just ignorant of the field, Praise.
Okay,
there's
name
nothing
the
special
paper
about
then. I want to see the paper. Name it, please.
Hoarseness and Causes and Treatments by Rudolph Reiter, Professor Thomas, blah, 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 on NCBI PMC website. You can just Google PubMed, spontaneous remission of laryngitis. There's tons of papers.
Again, you're just general laryngitis.
No, I didn't say anything about general laryngitis. No, okay, no Praise. I didn't say anything about general laryngitis. This applies to all of them.
You just said yourself it was general laryngitis.
No, I didn't, Praise. I read the title of the paper, which includes all of the kinds of laryngitis, hoarseness. So no, Praise, you're wrong again. You just don't know the field.
No, that's not.
Hey,
I just looked at the paper. No, it's not there. I just looked at it. I just looked it up myself.
PubMed, just Google PubMed, laryngitis.
I just did.
Happens all the time. Well, then you're ignorant and you can't read because this is common.
Oh, really? So I can't read now.
There's literally nothing special about the case you did. Nothing. It's like saying, "Oh, look, a tree fell over. It must be a miracle."
No, he had over 200 doctors, 63 specialists, and their teams could not help his laryngitis.
Nothing special about that at all, Praise.
Of course there is. That's
no Praise.
That's a miracle by definition.
No Praise. Yeah. Again, you're confusing our medical technology. If we don't have the medical technology to cure something, that makes it incurable.
It's just nature of the gaps.
No, Praise. Incurable means we don't have a way to cure it. It does not mean it cannot be cured. You're confusing the medical terminology.
Or naturalistically cannot be cured, period.
No, Praise. That's not what it means. You're ignorant of medicine. In medicine, incurable means we do not currently have a way to cure it. It does not mean it cannot be cured. You're just ignorant of the field. So I want to move on to this point because that's such a stupid point. Let's move on to something more interesting because I've debunked that.
And you didn't debunk anything, but parapsychology is another one. And you guys decided to pivot off of that as well and try to shift the goalposts on that. I gave a paper that was demonstrated in the peer review literature, and it says that it is legitimate science. It's just as legitimate as psychology itself. So I want to know what excuse you have now for that. So what's your excuse now?
Experimental Parapsychology as a Rejected Science, Paul D. Allison paper on Sage Journals. Yeah, we know this doesn't work. So
none of that's evidence. It's in the psych journals.
No, I'm not refuting that there are published papers on it. I know there are. I've talked to some of the writers of them. They don't convince the experts. If you have evidence, that's great. You can present it to the experts in the field.
You didn't even read the paper itself. It's peer reviewed.
Great. I never said it wasn't. So I'm agreeing there is peer reviewed papers in parapsychology. They convince no one in the field because they don't work. So there are lots of crazy papers in academia.
Well, by definition, it is accepted in the field because it wouldn't. If it was rejected, it wouldn't be accepted.
No Praise. There are lots of stupid published academic papers. Accepted by the fields means it convinces the consensus in the fields. So there are lots of dumb papers published on all kinds of things. There are flat Earth papers published. There's all kinds of dumb papers. Yes, Perry's. I've talked with other people about it.
Really? So you read this specific paper that I outlined?
Probably yes, which doesn't help your case.
Oh, really? So what does it say?
Again, Praise. It doesn't help your case at all.
Paper?
How should I know? I read tons of papers on it because I talked with the people in the field.
You said you read it probably. So
yes,
what does
I
it say?
I've read tons of papers in the field. You ignoramus. So yes.
You said you read my particular paper. I'm asking, what does it say?
I probably read that
Please
one.
Summarize it. Tell me
what it says. Ignoramus. I've read lots of books that I can't remember what they say.
All you're doing is doing cognitive dissonance here. Please. No one cares about your cognitive dissonance. You don't even know what
cognitive dissonance is, Praise.
No, it isn't. It causes mental displeasure for you, so you try to just hand wave it away and reject it.
There's nothing there about
it's just denialism, buddy. That's all you have.
No Praise. You're
I'm going
an
to give it
idiot.
to Greg though,
Praise,
because
praise,
this is getting.
praise. I'm gonna crush your dumb argument again. So again, as I've said, if you have a published paper in an academic journal, the point is to convince the
You said you
consensus.
read it. Let's hear a summarization of
I
it.
can crush your argument. I don't even need to read the paper. So it's pretty simple. I've read it.
Your
Read lots of them.
narcissism's coming out, Tom.
Praise,
I'll
why
let
are you
Greg
still
take
talking?
over.
Move on
Shut
off
off and
this
let me
point.
crush your dumb
Go
argument.
ahead, Greg.
Let's move
So,
on from this point.
again-
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, Praise's stupid argument is that there was a published paper, therefore the published paper is true. Clearly not the
No,
case.
that's
There's
not-
all
that's
kinds-
not my
stop
argument.
interrupting, Praise. Stop interrupting, Praise. So we know that just because there's a published paper on lots of stupid things doesn't mean that that qualifies as anything. Like there are dumb papers, inspiring philosophy posts for mental, like the holographic principle, and that we're all in a big program. Like, yeah, there are dumb published papers in journals. That isn't evidence.
You said you read it though. What does it say?
Stop praise. So again, the fact that there is a published paper isn't evidence of anything. It would be evidence if it could convince the consensus. No one is convinced. Praise's paper is just a dumb, random paper published by a niche scientist, like inspiring philosophy, not evidence.
All right. Let's get the other guys in here.
All right. So would you like to continue discussing the moral argument, or would you like to get into the Leibnizian cosmological argument?
Either one's up to you. What do you think is more important?
I say probably the Leibnizian cosmological argument is more important, I guess, so to speak.
Okay, so my take on that is we can grant there's a necessary thing. It can just be natural. There's no reason to conclude it's God at all. Also, the PSR is rejected by most philosophers. It's highly controversial. It's literally in the first line of this Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on it.
Okay, so let's go through the first point, which is that it can be a natural event, but I would doubt that, since agent causation, because since event causation would lead to an infinite regress of events, and it would have to be non-physical as well, because a necessary substance cannot contain contingent things inside of it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be necessary. Right?
No. So necessary is a made-up abstract criterion that we've made up. So we can put in any kinds of things, and it doesn't correspond to reality just because we've defined it in a certain way. It could be anything. Energy could be the necessary thing, and it could have lots of independent parts, and there's no problem with that. The fact that we arbitrarily define it as, well, this is the way we'd like it to be, doesn't necessarily correspond to reality until you can demonstrate it. So all the theologians have done is they've made up a definition which they think is true, and then asserted that it corresponds to reality with no evidence. Until you can demonstrate the necessary thing, or the property of necessary has this specific criteria of the way it is, then it's just your assertion. This is an argument from ignorance of you. I imagine it to be this way, therefore it is this way.
Well, no. I would say, for instance, for when we talk about the definition of a necessary would just simply be like, let's start with a basic example, just like a proposition like all bachelors are unmarried. That would be necessary. If we're talking in a modal context, it would be true in all possible worlds. Like, this is more like, I'm not trying to make an ontological argument here, but that would be a necessary thing. I guess some could consider numbers to be necessary, and basically a necessary thing is something that could not have failed to exist, no matter what world it is in.
Right, that's one definition which can be rejected in many cases. Like, you could just say there is a universe that is grounded in the spaghetti monster. There is another universe that's grounded in the Christian God. There's another universe that's grounded in Hare Krishna. And so each universe can have its own necessary thing, which just grounds that one universe, but doesn't exist in any other. There's nothing in any accepted definition of necessary that entails there is one thing that exists in all possible universes. Again, that's just a made-up definition by theologians that most philosophers reject, like all of them.
Well, look, if it's only in one universe, if like something is only in one, modal universe, because if we're talking in a modal context, that means logically necessary must be the case in all possible worlds. That all unmarried people are bachelors. That wouldn't just be in our universe. That would be in another. Because what you're getting at here is physically necessary, but I'm not talking about physically necessary. I'm talking about logically and metaphysically necessary, which I would argue that a God would be.
Which wouldn't apply. So again, the physical reality isn't contingent on logic. Logic is a language made up by humans. So what's logically necessary is just the way we've defined terms, which is just how we've defined terms. So that wouldn't apply at all. You can't extrapolate from our definitions of logic to what is the fundamental nature of reality. Again, there's no logical contradiction with each independent universe having just one grounds of the spaghetti monster in one, and the Christian God in another, and Hare Krishna in another, or just energy in one. There's no logical contradiction there at all, which is what the modal logic is arguing, is that there is a logical contradiction in that statement.
Well, would you argue that certain statements are logically necessary?
Descriptive statements are logically necessary in the language, yes, not in the world.
Like, what do you mean by in the language?
If you make a statement means X and not X, then that would be necessarily contradictory because of the language you've made up.
But would you agree that, for instance, all unmarried people are all bachelors are unmarried would be a logically necessary statement based on the current definitions we have?
Sure.
Okay, so there are certain necessary things. It's not just something made
in language based on definitions. Yes.
Okay, so so I'm trying to understand here.
A thing cannot be itself and not itself at the same time. I'm willing to grant that. Yes, that's a necessary, true statement.
Right. So what I would argue is that a deity, a necessary deity, would be necessary from a logical and metaphysical perspective, based on what I just gave. There's a set of
you didn't give any justification for that. You just asserted it.
Say that again.
You didn't give any justification for that. You just asserted it. So again, my argument is that I can have one universe with the spaghetti monster, one universe with the Christian God, one universe with Hare Krishna. There is no logical contradiction there. There is nothing that would require one necessary being to exist in all possible worlds. This is not something justified by anything you've said.
Well, that's kind of a reversal of what I was, I guess, a reversal of the order of what I was saying. I'm not saying Christian God, therefore necessary. I'm establishing.
No. Again, you're arguing there is one necessary thing in all possible worlds. I'm saying that statement is just something you've made up. There is nothing to support that statement. You can have a bunch of worlds, each with its own necessary thing, which is dependent, or which is only in that one world. So that statement that you made, that there is a necessary thing that exists in all possible worlds, which is how it's defined in modal logic, is just a made-up definition which doesn't necessarily follow that there is such a thing that grounds the reality.
Well, I'm saying it's necessary because an infinite regress would be impossible, like of contingent things, and therefore, and the explanation of that contingent thing would have to be thus necessary and not contingent.
Well, there's two things there. Starting to up. One is that infinite regress isn't impossible. It's rejected by every physicist. Most models have an infinite regress, but that doesn't matter. Even if I grant infinite regresses are impossible, the spaghetti monster isn't an infinite regress. It's just a necessary thing. The Hare Krishna is just a necessary thing that created the universe. There isn't an infinite regress in any of those. Those are just a brute stopping point, just like the Christian God would be. It just only exists in one universe instead of all of them.
Well, I wouldn't just argue that it's just one necessary thing. I'd argue that it'd have to be non-physical as well, because once again, it wouldn't be made up of contingent substances, and of course, it would be independent of space-time as well. And I would argue that's generally closer to the definition of what is commonly accepted as a God. That's what I'm kind of arguing.
So again, nothing in physics supports that
thing. Otherwise, yeah, it could be anything. It could be this flying spaghetti monster. It could be a physical event. But I argued otherwise.
So again, non-physical doesn't follow from any of that. The fact that it's outside of space-time is just the thing in our universe. Space-time is not a philosophical concept that exists in all possible natural worlds. It's just the thing represented by lambda in Einstein's general and special relativity. So being outside of that could be anything. It could be other physical things. It could be other universes, the multiverse, string theory, et cetera, et cetera. So the fact that whatever created our universe is outside of space-time tells us nothing about it at all, other than it's outside of the thing that it made, which could be anything. So it could be physical. There's nothing stopping that at all, because space-time in physics just refers to one kind, just our kind, not all kinds. Secondly, even if I granted it was non-physical, it could still be the spaghetti monster or Hare Krishna or any other infinitely other gods. Being non-physical also doesn't indicate that there is a necessary being that exists in all possible worlds. There's infinitely many such possible beings.
Okay, well, two things. The first is on the non-physical point. It would follow that it would be non-physical since the concept of physicality is fundamentally a contingent concept. So
just to interrupt right there. So our concept of physicality is we don't know everything about what physical constitutes. So there could be a necessary physical thing out there we just don't know about yet. So you're confusing our concept of physicality with the essence of ontology of physicality, which we don't know.
Well, what would be the difference?
Our ideas don't represent reality. We always have like a limited understanding of every concept. So there could just be more physical stuff, more qualities of physical stuff out there we just don't know about yet, like a perfect essence of perfect simplicity or whatever.
Okay, well, first we'd have to define what physical means. And physical, as it's generally accepted, is just something that's tangible or concrete. Therefore, it could exist in one possible world, and it couldn't exist, it could not exist in another possible modal world. So therefore, it would be a contingent concept. So
no, because that's definitely not the definition used in physics. Like there are physical properties of just geometries that don't physically exist. Like amplituhedron, emergent spacetime, those are physical things by the physical universe that don't exist in our spacetime. So no.
I didn't claim that it existed.
You said tangible. You said physical and tangible. These are non-physical, non-tangible things.
Yeah, it's you're right. I would agree with you there. It doesn't have to be tangible. It could be non-tangible. But once again, and I would just like to finish my second point on independent of space-time. I would agree with you that it wouldn't necessarily be saying much, but the fact that it's independent of space-time would be saying pretty much one thing, which is that this is a necessary being, and that it's not, and that it wouldn't be observable in our universe. So when I said independent of space-time, I wasn't necessarily just saying this as like a big revelation.
But I was objecting to the first one where you said this is a necessary being. Like, no, there could be infinitely many things outside of space-time that are non-necessary beings. Like there could be particles that exist outside of space-time that are non-necessary, they're perfectly contingent. There could be infinitely many possible beings that are outside of space-time that are not necessary beings in all possible worlds. The fact that it's outside of space-time tells us nothing other than it's outside of our universe. That's it. That's literally the only thing the statement means.
I don't think infinite regresses are possible, because that would lead to, if we have an infinite chain of like contingent events, I wouldn't argue that wouldn't be possible, due to the fact that it would lead to certain problems, like what is infinity minus infinity? You know?
Again, I didn't say anything about an infinite regress. And first of all,
it's just infinity in general. There's a problem with the concept of an actual infinite. You know,
there's not actually, but in physics, most models have an actual infinite. There isn't a problem there. Infinity is just a concept in our head. It doesn't. Again, you're confusing our concept with reality, but that is irrelevant to my argument, because I didn't say anything about an actual infinite existing. I just said there could be a thing that is purely physical that exists outside of space-time. There's no infinite regress there. There's no actual infinity there.
Sure. I'm not saying that there aren't physical things. Like the explanation of the universe might be a quantum fluctuation. What I'm arguing is a strictly philosophical argument. It wouldn't be based on physics, right? Which is why people like Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas were already constructing arguments like this a long time ago. Which is that this is based off of philosophical necessity, not necessarily just here's the scientific evidence that the universe is this way and that quantum fluctuations cannot have cause the universe. Because I'm perfectly willing to grant that another thing, like a non-God being, would have caused the universe. I would disagree there with arguments such as the Kalam cosmological argument, which argue that, and that is an example of the God of the gaps argument, to say the cause of the universe is X, Y, Z, and we know for sure. Is it God, or rather?
Wait, I think you're going down a rabbit trail. So again, my argument is that your definition of a necessary being is wrong. It's just something you've made up. I can make a different definition of a necessary being, which is a better and more accurate definition. Like, for example, I can say the spaghetti monster is a necessary being. And get rid of the all possible worlds. You don't need that for a necessary being. It just needs to be necessary in the one universe. And there's no logical contradiction with a being generating a universe and being the necessary cause of that universe with no precursors. It's just, it exists outside of space-time. Like the spaghetti monster exists outside of space-time, non-physically, created our universe, and there's nothing before it in our universe. And there's the same thing in a different universe. There's no contradiction here. So you don't need your definition of a...
Right. But when you construct arguments, for instance, you have to accept certain definitions. Otherwise, we're arguing about two separate things. So
so I accept your definition, but I'm saying your definition is wrong. Show me why your definition is right.
I don't have to show him why my definition is right. When you talk about arguments, you have to accept certain definitions. Like we accept that cracker means like something with wheat, or that's not a good definition, honestly. But we have to accept certain definitions in order to make arguments about crackers.
Right. I accept what your definition is, and I say it's wrong. So I understand what your definition is, and I'm rejecting your definition as just being made up by you and doesn't correspond to reality. So I understand your definition. I know how you use the word, and I'm saying that's wrong. You just made it up. How do you show that it's right and it corresponds to reality, and you didn't just make it up?
I'm not saying I'm not saying that it exists, the definition of necessary, because look, things cannot exist, for instance, and so we can still have a definition for them, and then we would construct arguments for why that thing exists, right?
So if I make up a definition of saying there is a necessary being in all possible worlds, I just made that up. There's no reason to believe that actually exists anywhere. So you need to give me some additional reason, like the arguments you mentioned, to show why it exists outside of just my definition, right?
Well, to be fair, that's not really a definition, but like if you were to construct a definition and then you were to say this thing exists, and then you would have to, you come up with a definition of something, and then you would have to construct an argument for why that thing exists.
Right. So I'm looking for the argument for why that your thing exists and my spaghetti monster model doesn't exist.
Sorry, say that again.
So I'm saying all of my spaghetti monster things can answer all of the things you presented. There's no contradiction. So all of the arguments you presented work equally as well under my spaghetti monster individual universe model as your model.
It's still the same descriptions as our God, though. So you can invoke the spaghetti monster, but it still has the same descriptions as our God.
No praise.
But I would also like to have a discussion with Skylar, maybe, in a few moments.
Sure, but no, so it's not the same as your God. I made mine out of magical spaghetti. Your God is not made out of magical spaghetti. Or I could
it's still
praise. Or I could just use naturalistic pantheism and get rid of the consciousness. There's lots of different ways to make it distinguished from the God. Not a problem. I solved that a long time ago.
Nope.
Not conscious means not Christian God.
No, but when you bring this flying spaghetti monster, it's a material being.
Doesn't matter, praise. I just need to distinguish it from the God.
Can I just say the final word on it, and then Praise can go?
Absolutely.
So basically, what I'd just like to say is, you could argue for a flying spaghetti monster however you'd like, but because obviously this is not at all a specific argument. The Leibnizian cosmological argument is a pretty vague argument when it's referring to a specific deity, right? I'm like the moral argument would obviously be more specific, but for here, I mean, I guess you could solve with the flying spaghetti monster or some kind of variation for it. It would be hard, but I guess you could. But I'm willing to grant that you could. But I'm still saying that this is the commonly accepted definition of a God, and if the spaghetti monster goes under that definition, then yeah, the argument is the argument's still valid. We'd have to go through what specific God.
Well, I'm making an argument for polytheism here. I'm saying there could be one God for each universe, and the necessary thing is just each one per each universe, not as you have defined it of being necessary in all possible universes. So I'm rejecting the definition of necessary being in all possible universes and saying it could be in each one. So I'm rejecting this polytheism essentially.
Well, then how would it be necessary? I'm still
saying my definition of necessary is right. Your definition is made up and wrong.
And I still don't get this. I disagree with your understanding of how we're going about this. Again, the concept of all possible worlds would indicate, unless you're trying to argue, because maybe I'm not understanding your argument here, unless you're arguing that my definition doesn't correspond to my argument and that your definition better does, and that it can be attenuated for individual universes. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm saying you have a definition and you use that definition in your argument, and I just change the definition and use that my definition in my argument, and my argument works equally as well as yours, and so your argument, which proves your argument doesn't actually work as evidence for your conclusion. So if I say here is a box, the box weighs 2 pounds, therefore there is a rabbit in the box, I could say no, the box weighs 2 pounds, therefore there's a lizard in the box. That evidence doesn't indicate your conclusion of a rabbit. So you've presented an argument to try and indicate the conclusion there is a necessary being in all possible worlds. I reject that and say, well, I can just use the same arguments and say there's a necessary being in each potential world, no problem.
But that wouldn't logically follow. What I'm saying is
you'd have to. How? That's the question I've been asking. How would that not logically follow? Where is the problem in my model as opposed to yours?
Because your argument didn't go along the lines of my argument. It was different. Like
how? You'd have to actually explain it, not just say it's different.
No, because I'm really not following your reasoning here. Could you elaborate on it a little bit more?
Right. So I'm saying that any argument you propose to try and indicate a necessary being in all possible worlds, I can match that with a better argument for a necessary being in each possible world. So I'm arguing the definition.
Yeah, and how would you support that?
What?
And how would you support that?
By showing that any of your arguments can be reflected and work for both conclusions, so they don't indicate your conclusion. So I'm like my box example.
How would you do that?
By taking your argument and then repeating it and changing the nouns.
You didn't. No, that's not exactly how your argument was. Because you didn't really support your argument.
I copied exactly your statements word for word. That's kind of my stick. So you said there's a necessary being that's required that needs to be non-infinite regress, non-physical. Okay, I can do that for each possible universe. Not a problem.
No, you can't, because again, the definition of necessary, as I'm defining it, is something that it would be for.
Again, your definition of necessary.
Hold on.
Wait. So again, your definition of necessary is your argument, but I'm using a different argument with a different definition. So you have to show that your version works better than my version. Just saying that your definition is different does nothing. Like, I know it's different. That's why I'm using it.
Well, your version doesn't matter then if your definition is different as well.
Definitions do not indicate truth.
No, because
you have a definition.
That's a premise. Definition is a.
I think we might be going in circles a little bit at this point.
And maybe we can switch maybe around to.
Let's hear something from Skylar. We haven't heard from him pretty much the whole time.
Well, I think I'd like if I'd be fine with getting into the whole precept thing with praise for a couple minutes. That's fine if we want to go back and forth with your first thing you brought up about. I'm just kind of interested to hear how I can't have knowledge or I can't make any type of truth claims or anything like that. I'd be more interested to hear about that.
Right. So before you can justify any type of knowledge, see, here's the thing that atheists don't have
I'm not an atheist.
Or I would say non-God believers.
Okay. So non-God believers don't have what?
So they don't have a basis to move belief into knowledge. So what moves your belief into knowledge? You need some type of
demonstration. I mean, how are you defining knowledge in this way?
Exactly.
Knowing something is a fact. What I mean, no, that's not actually explaining what I'm asking you. Like, if I could demonstrate something that I claim, would that be a demonstration of knowledge? Like for instance, I know that I'm not your Christian God. I can demonstrate that.
That is the synthetic. You know what a synthetic truth is?
I don't know what you mean by it. Go ahead. What's a synthetic truth?
So synthetic truths are based on empiricism, which means your senses to tell you something, or so you believe that is the case. So you need something.
It is the case. Well, you would agree it's the case, right?
Well,
I'm not your Christian God, right?
I'm talking about empiricism right now. So you need
no.
Well,
the whole point of what you're saying is that I can't know anything. I can't have knowledge. I'm demonstrating to you right now that I have knowledge.
Yeah,
without God, right? So I don't have God right now. I am not your Christian God. I would be lying to you if I were your Christian God, and God can't lie according to the Bible. So therefore, it is impossible that I am your Christian God. And if I were your Christian God, I'd certainly know it, I would imagine. So I've just demonstrated knowledge to you that I can know things. So your whole premise is faulty.
No. So you need a justification to validate that your knowledge, that your beliefs are knowledge. So what is your justification?
Wait, I'm sorry. That is knowledge. I have knowledge of a particular thing. I just demonstrated knowledge. Is that not knowledge of something?
You have a conceptual grasp.
His knowledge was a logical contradiction. That was his justification.
Repeat. I'm sorry. What did you say there?
His justification was a logical contradiction. God says he can't lie. Skylar says he's not God. So if he was God, that would be a lie. So he can't be God. It's a logical contradiction is what he's arguing. Yeah. That's his justification.
No, so again, we're talking about justification of a belief to make a
knowledge. Well, no, you said I can't have knowledge. I just demonstrate that I have knowledge.
No. I'm saying you have no justification for knowledge. You need to justify.
Why? Why do I need that?
Because this is arbitrary.
Hold on, Tom. Is that just your opinion that I need justification in order to prove something to you specifically?
Well, unless you can see that it's arbitrary on your part, yeah.
What? Wait a minute. But how does this lead you to God? I'm sorry. That's what I'm trying to understand. Like somehow, like you have a knowledge that I don't, is what you're saying?
No, I have a justification for knowledge that you do not.
Okay. Can you demonstrate that justification? Can you prove that God communicates to you?
It's axiomatic. So we have the laws of logic.
So it's just an empty claim and assertion.
No, I mean, what I'm talking about is a comparison of worldviews. So your worldview cannot justify anything, any knowledge, any truth.
I don't justify it to you, maybe. Like maybe it's not justified to you, but I can demonstrate that I have knowledge. But once again, so basically what you're saying is, hey, Skylar, justify and demonstrate that you have a foundation of knowledge when all you have is an axiom that says God gives you knowledge.
No,
which is an empty claim.
No, we have axioms that are verifiable through the laws of logic, but that's the issue.
You can't verify that God gives you knowledge.
How do you justify the laws of logic without God?
I don't have to justify them.
Of course you do. Because
no, I don't.
Yeah, you do, because then that means that you're incompetent in your worldview.
What are you even saying? What are you even saying?
I'm
I'm
saying,
incompetent in my worldview. This isn't an argument. This
I'm
is just
saying
empty
your worldview is
assertions. And,
incompetent.
okay, yes, I got that empty assertion, right? But I've already demonstrated that I have knowledge, and I'm able to reason and to think. Listen. I accept. I could just have basic axioms, just like you. I believe that that I'm real.
You
I believe that
presuppose
I
the
exist.
laws of
I think,
logic,
therefore,
though.
I am. I'm sorry. No, I mean, let's just grant and say that I do. Okay. That doesn't get you to God.
Yeah, of course it does, because the basis for logic necessarily invokes God. It necessarily is the case.
Okay, how are you going to demonstrate that?
Easily. They are non-temporal, they are immaterial, and they are tautological.
What does that have to do with God?
Because
how are you
that's
defining
the
God?
description of God. That is God.
How do you know that?
Through revelation, even
so
this.
God told you so. Okay, yeah, there we go. Once again, you have an empty claim that God told you so. What am I supposed to do with that?
We have the Word of God. I mean,
We're not talking about the Christian God tonight. You're just talking about God, right? That was the debate topic, because I was told we weren't going to do the Christian God through email, because I wanted to have that debate this evening.
Well, James never, he never revealed that to me, because that's what I thought God means, Elohim in the Hebrew.
But it was in the email thread. But that doesn't matter. Listen, that's not it's not your fault. I'm not saying it. But my point is, though, so let's go with that. That's fine. We can keep your Christian God. I'm happy to debate that. All right. So now you're saying, God's word. So now we've just added another assertion on top of God communicates to you. How do you know God communicates to you? Because God's word, the Bible. How do we know that the Bible is God's word? Because in the Bible it says that it's God's word. Is that where we're about to go?
No, and the other things that the Bible reveals that are consistent with the laws of logic, they are married together.
What? Wait a minute. Okay, so you now we've like I said, now you're appealing to a Bible. How do we know that the Bible is God's word?
Well, can I just intervene here for a sec?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Praise, I think he's trying to ask you. You made the claim that God gave you this to you through revelation. So you'd have to back up that the revelation is actually true, and that it is the word of God. That's what he's trying to say. Because I think your assertion was bare.
Well, I would say historically we have historical attestation for the Bible that verifies it. We have predictive prophecy that verifies the Bible through messianic prophecy.
No, we don't. Wait, isn't that what Skylar said before?
That doesn't make it go away, though.
Wait, isn't that what Skylar said before? Is that he's using demonstrations to justify his claim, and you're just claiming that, well, you think it's God because of your demonstration. So aren't you using the same justification Skylar is?
No, because again, the descriptions of logic, so Skylar needs something that is immaterial, that is eternal, and that is tautological. Yeah.
No, I don't. Why do I need that? Because you say so? Because Praise says I need that in order to have knowledge? But we've already demonstrated that I have knowledge.
That's how the laws of logic work, though. That's
no, they are descriptions of reality. Yes, I agree that the laws of logic are descriptions of reality. They're not God, as the Christian would articulate.
They're descriptions of something prescriptive, though.
What does that mean? They are descriptions of something What are you talking about?
Yeah, so something that prescribes us how to correct illogical thinking, but they are descriptive.
That seems like you're just asserting that. I don't. What are you saying prescribes these things? You're basically saying God prescribes the laws of logic.
No,
that's the premise that you have demonstrated.
They're axiomatic, so we can access them mentally.
That's not what axiomatic means. Like you're accepting them as axiomatic. That's your starting point.
No, right? That's philosophy's general understanding. That's what they classify it as. Aristotelian logic. Look it up.
No, they classify logic as descriptive. There's no prescriptive logic.
Well, I never said they weren't descriptive. I said they're descriptive of something prescriptive.
No, makes no sense. That's a contradiction. Yeah. So in philosophy, they're just descriptive.
No, they're descriptive of something prescriptive, though.
That's a contradiction.
It's not. No, it's not. It's just like math is descriptive of something prescriptive. It's the same thing.
No, math is also just descriptive. Like, I don't know what you mean when you say descriptive of something prescriptive. Yeah. Could you explore that? Skylar was right when he says that makes no sense. What does that mean?
It means that they are accessible, that you can think upon them.
That's not what prescriptive means, though.
Yes, it does. It prescribes. We access them.
Isn't
We
it
have
kind of
to
like
think upon them.
prescription, like your doctor writes you a prescription? Like
They are available for correction. See, if I said that up is down, we would say that's a self-contradiction. But what would make me say there's just something that makes it descriptively true, though? No, we have to. It's prescriptive at the same time.
I don't know what you're saying.
What?
I mean,
I honestly don't know what you're saying.
understand it, then I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, it seems to go over your head, but
I don't think it's going over our head. I think you're just saying stuff that's nonsense.
No, I just gave you an example. If I said something is up and down at the same time, could you show me that descriptively?
No, because it would be a logical contradiction. Yes.
It's conceptual. See, it's not descriptive because they're conceptual.
No. That's a contradiction. What you did, it can't be up and down at the same time.
Right.
It's hot and cold at the same time.
Conceptual is still descriptive, so I can describe my concepts. I'm thinking of a unicorn. That's
concepts. No. The word concept, what the dictionary's definition means in the mind. Right. So they're not reduced to the brain, though, because if we can't find the law of logic in the brain, so it's the mind, immaterial mind. Sure, it's like I said, it's descriptive of something prescriptive.
That still makes no sense. Like, you can describe everything in your mind just with descriptions. There's no prescriptions there.
You're just talking about the way reality functions. Again, that's all you're doing. You're describing how reality functions. No, it's not. No, that's not an argument.
It is. Like, you're
just like that. Oh, praise. That's not an argument just to say it's going over our head. Right? It's your job. You're the one arguing for this. Like, you need to articulate.
It.
I know, but it doesn't.
Conceptual. Do you know what the word conceptual means? The definition.
Tom just explained it. Tom just literally explained to you how those are still descriptions. You want me to give you an actual description? I'll go look it up. Give you a specific one. I'm not going to do one off the top of my head.
It's based on mental concepts. Yeah. That's like, the term you used was descriptive of prescriptive. Mental concepts are just descriptive. You can describe all mental concepts with just descriptions. How does that fit your term descriptive of prescriptive?
Again, if they were descriptive, they would not be mental. That you would say that they are merely descriptive of reality, physical, material, natural.
Praise, I can grant. Let's just grant there is a non-physical realm. There is this non-physical realm made of bubblies, and the bubblies exist. What I just said was a descriptive statement of a non-physical realm, a mental realm. So no, that's still descriptive.
They still prescribe us how to think, though. Like, so your mind automatically, so all minds just automatically correct illogical statements? No, we have to think upon them. The fact we have to think upon them means they're prescriptive.
What?
No,
that's not at all.
That's like the rules of chess. Well, we have to think about the rules of chess. Therefore, the rules of chess are prescriptive. Like, we made them up. They aren't. There's no kind of automatic prescription there. That's not a thing.
Then everyone would be logical by necessity. Then, so you have to demonstrate everyone's logical. Then,
no.
How is it possible to be illogical then?
Because you can choose to be illogical.
Your brain may not function properly. You may have a brain functioning problem where you're not thinking clearly.
That's special pleading. I mean, you have to demonstrate that every mind is descriptively tuned into logic, and there's no evidence of that.
What?
And even the
logic isn't a thing outside of it. It's a description of our reality. You're confusing the word logic. How are you using that word there in that sentence?
I'm using rational inference. That's what the definition means.
Okay,
inference.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So you're saying that people can't be rational without God?
You know the word inference? You know what that means?
Oh my God! Just answer the question.
It infers us how to think correctly. Even the
what does it mean to think correctly? What does that mean to think correctly?
No, it infers us how to use rationality correctly.
What does that mean?
It prescribes us to be rational. That's what it means.
Yeah, and the rules of chess.
Rational prescription.
Honestly, wait, I think this got a little off topic, honestly, because like I want to keep this with I want to keep Praise talking here, having the discussion, but like I'm not sure where we're at right now, because original
maybe we can move into something else.
So infer. What is inferring in logic? What is it inferring to?
Conclusion. You lead to a conclusion. Deduce or lead to a conclusion.
It infers us to the laws itself, the law of non-contradiction, the other laws,
No, that's just observation. We don't
no.
produce those.
Show me the law. Okay, show me the law of non-contradiction in a test tube or
No,
under a microscope.
it's like, show me the word tree anywhere. The word tree describes something that exists. It itself does not exist. The law of logic doesn't exist anywhere. It's a word. It's language, like English.
So the law of non-contradiction somewhere in the universe in its language.
No, it's a language in our heads, like English. It doesn't exist anywhere. It's a description of things that exist.
Okay, then describe it for me. What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? The laws of logic.
The same as the English language. It's just.
Oh, really? So what does that taste like? What does that feel like? What does that hear like? What does it sound like?
It's a made up language by humans. It doesn't exist.
So you're admitting it's a non-physical then?
It doesn't exist. It's an idea. So
it's
Praise, even if I grant you it's non-physical, that does nothing to help your case. It's still descriptive.
It does everything to prove my case, because if it transcends natural paradigm, material, physical processes, then obviously that means that there is something transcendent. You have to qualify that in your worldview, and you can't.
That would mean the laws of logic were transcendent. That doesn't mean anything else would be. So if the laws of logic are transcendent and exist, then you don't need a God because you have the laws of logic.
Our God best accounts for the laws of logic. You have nothing else to. By definition, you fail because your worldview is material natural. You lose.
Praise.
I mean, that's game over right there.
Making up an explanation isn't an explanation. So I can explain the laws of logic as brute facts. That's a better explanation than a God, 100% of the time.
No, it's begging the question.
Okay. All right, you guys. So yeah, let's move on. I just want to say, if anybody wants to ask a question, tag me in the chat, and I'll ask it here at the end. Let's go for maybe like another 15 minutes or so. And did you guys want to touch on either of Greg's arguments again?
Yeah, that'd be nice. I just like to say one thing, though, because I think this topic shifted a little bit towards not from just does a God exist, but rather to does the Christian God exist? And if we're talking about the laws of logic here, I guess Praise and the Atheist and TJump and Skylar Fiction are kind of misunderstanding here. I think Praise is saying, God best accounts for the laws of logic. But I don't think you're clarifying enough whether the Christian God necessarily accounts for the laws of logic transcendentally. And I think you guys are talking about different things. So maybe, Praise, could you clarify a little bit why it's specifically, the Christian God that account for it before, and then I can talk about the moral argument.
Yeah. So I would say the Christian God best accounts for the laws of logic, because he's a necessary being, and he is through the argument that you gave, Greg, with he is the greatest being, the ontological argument. So if he is maximally great, then that would obviously supersede any other deities out there. And we have other arguments we can do to justify that he is a necessary being and the greatest, maximally greatest being. So that's how I would ground it with the Christian God.
Yeah, I just don't accept the Bible is sorry. We're just going to go back to the Bible, and then you're going to say the Bible's true, and then be like, why is the Bible true? Because the Bible says it's true, and God said it in the Bible, and we're just in this vicious circle where we have empty claims and assertions. So I just don't feel this is a very good argument whatsoever.
Exactly. That's why I said just saying the laws of logic are brute facts is a better argument than a God, because it's equally as circular, but doesn't have all of this nonsense about some kind of being that drowns millions of babies and is all powerful.
That's just, just being, to be a dogmatic atheist, you just reject. It's to be a rejectionist. Who cares about your feelings or opinions about the Bible that are incorrect in the first place? But I did offer parapsychology. Are you guys familiar with the experimental data and evidence for parapsychology?
Yes, I've had them on my show. I've had some of the experts on my show.
What is the experimental data? What are some of those experiments?
There were two big experiments done. I forget by the names of them guys on it, but the guy from New Thinking Aloud who runs the channel has been on my show, and we have literally talked about this, and none of it's evidence, which is why it's not accepted by the consensus.
No, you're just dismissing it out of
No, I've
arbitrarily.
literally
Hold on. So we have a paper called "Observation of a Psychokinetic Effect Under Highly Controlled Conditions." This is a paper,
I
and
didn't say it wasn't.
okay, so there's experimental data of the supernatural right there.
Remember, Praise, I already addressed this. There's lots of silly papers that are published. For them to count as evidence, they need to convince the consensus. That's what the papers are published for. You need to present them to the experts. The expert needs to say, oh, this is really good. We can repeat this and show it was true. And then if they do that, it becomes accepted. Or they find it's unrepeatable, like in most, even psychology stuff and social science stuff is unrepeatable. And so it's not evidence of anything, which is what they find.
That is the consensus, though. But
parapsychology goes, I just want to know, do any of you have a meta-analysis on the review of a parapsychological literature, which just goes through like 500 different studies on it?
Yes, I do. And that was outlined in my presentation, a meta-analysis of parapsychology. This is what I'm saying. This denialism is useless. It's a useless argument from TJump. It's because I think he's bigoted towards the idea of the supernatural. That's all it comes down to.
That's the typical pseudoscience argument. Well, my dissenters are just biased and can't understand it because I have to be right. Clearly,
I provided the evidence, so you're just denying it.
Do you know what the problem of reproducibility is in social science?
Do you know the problem of
Praise? This isn't a trick question. If you don't know it, that's fine. It just means that we've tried to reproduce studies in social science and have been unable to do so for many of them, like the good ones, like psychology. So if you're comparing parapsychology to psychology, then you're saying it's non-reproducible. It's not evidence because we can't reproduce even the strongest psychology studies. So the reason that your parapsychology studies are not evidence is because
I never compared it with psychology. I'm comparing the amount of papers with psychology, the amount of justification, verification of it.
Well, to be fair, TJump, the reproducibility crisis is only, I think, in application to the social sciences, as yes, those are very hard to reproduce. So because they're honestly, I think they're crap. The social sciences studies. I don't think this is applying to specifically the kind of psychology that he's talking about. I don't think the reproducibility crisis has been as pervasive in psychology because the methodology there is a lot more clear than in disciplines such as the social sciences, I think.
That's the part where I'm saying no. The reason that the parapsychology research is rejected is the same reason as actually because it's weaker than all of the psychology research. So that's why no one in consensus of experts accepts it, because it isn't reproducible.
And the paper I referenced actually says the exact opposite. There's actually more justification for parapsychology than psychology.
Again, Praise, the consensus of experts have looked at it. They have found it in garbage and rejected it.
Well, no, I actually show the consensus is for parapsychology inside the paper I referenced. So that's a direct lie. You're a pathological liar, Tom.
Can we quote the paper or something? Like I'm open to. Well, no, let me quote it now. So give me something specific that we can sink our teeth into here.
Okay, so here's the paper again. The experimental evidence for parapsychological phenomena. A review. This review is a meta-analysis.
No, something from the paper, like an actual. What was an experiment that they did?
Okay, so I'll even give you 5. So give me 1 second here. I'll pull it up.
While you're pulling that up, you mentioned that nothing supported what I said. The scientific consensus is that there is insufficient evidence to support the existence of psi phenomenon, quoted by Simon Higgerts, 1995, Rupert Kogan, 1998, Charles M. Wynne, 2001, Terence Hines, 2003, John Dilkvist, 1994, William B. Dress.
Useless.
The consensus is the expert. These are all polls with representations of the experts
in my
in the
paper,
field.
it mentions the consensus is for the validation of parapsychology.
When they're wrong, because these papers are right.
Like no one cares about your opinion.
Show me where it says that.
I'm going to give you.
These are wrong. So my papers say this is the consensus. I'm willing to bet if I just go to any college and ask them, I'm going to be right on this, and you're going to be wrong 100% of the time.
I'll bet you $1,000. I bet you put $1,000 on the line right now.
Definitely. I'm going to go with
Put
all
them
of
on the
these
line.
papers and do that for sure. 'cause
Put
all these papers are
$1,000
right.
on the line right now.
Sure.
I challenge you.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. What was the name of one of the
bet.
experiments? Give me one of the names of the experiments.
Okay,
So I
so
can
it's
look it up myself.
psychokinesis on random number generators, psychokinesis on living systems, ESP.
All right, let's
in
do
the
that on
GAN
living
field.
systems. Tell us what happened on the living systems one.
Okay, so in the living systems, there were biological systems, mind-matter interaction, or the psychokinesis, and more recently, some researchers refer to as the mental interaction with living systems, the ability to monitor internal functions of the body, including nervous system, using EEG and biofeedback technologies, has provided an opportunity to ask whether biological systems may also be affected by intention, which goes into idealism, which what we would say idealism is
So
fundamental.
how were the tests? So how were the tests done? Tell me how the experiments were done.
Sorry to interrupt. You can go after Praise, but do you want to get into the moral argument after this, like in like the after and like in like 2 minutes?
Yeah, I don't really want to explore these studies, like, because that's going to be tedious.
So they isolated different people and they put them with some plants and some animals, and so you can read about this.
All right, yeah, this is. I'm just saying, this is the kind of stuff. It's so useless to bring to a debate because, like, we can't get into the details of it. We can't know. Like bringing this to me, and I appreciate you did like the background stuff, Praise, to kind of put something forward. But like, what you would expect your opponents to do with any of this without proper time, like to look over these kind of things and see how the tests are run, to see legitimacy of it. It's just not really much we can do there.
But yeah, that was the exact paper that was brought up by the guy from New Thinking Aloud on my channel. So it is the one I've read. I did know I read it. And yeah, it's not evidence as the 8 papers I just listed that do talk about the consensus. And if you can find...
No, mine is a meta-analysis. That means I have thousands of papers being referenced.
This is the consensus of all of the experts, not just the papers. So that's literally what I just quoted. The scientific consensus.
That is flat-out disinformation. I mean, the paper I just gave is a meta-analysis of all papers.
Meta-analysis does not mean the consensus agrees with it. You need to publish the paper and then get the consensus to agree.
Well, I mean, you can check it out. You're just denying it.
I'm not denying
let's move on to this point.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, let's move on.
Well, I did want to Praise, could you find where it says the consensus agrees within the paper? Because I want to read that part.
Okay.
Later is fine. You can email it to me.
Do you guys want to? I'm sorry. Do you guys want to discuss the moral argument now and then wrap up and go into Q&A?
Sure. Jump right into it. Let's give it about another 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
So, TJump, as far as I've known, I've looked through your channel. Are you a natural moral? You're a natural moral realist. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So, as far as how I would argue for a God is, I just want to object to the natural moral realism, which is, for instance, that have you ever heard of the Aesop problem, which is that it's faulty to make statements about ought, which is based on statements about what is, because I think that's what people like Sam Harris, and Sam Harris, who wrote the book on objective morality, would suffer from.
The Aesop problem applies to both natural and supernatural and God. It applies to literally anything. But mine solves that problem, and so does most models of natural moral realism, because we get rid of the oughts. So that doesn't apply to natural moral realism, but it does apply to a God.
Well, I guess if you were to construct a specific kind of argument, then yeah, I guess someone can make the Aesop fallacy, but it's a fallacy. It's not just like in every single instance of God and natural moral realism. I guess the reason why would the natural moral realism specifically would suffer from that is because it makes a claim that dopamine, like this is Sam Harris specifically. I'm not quoting you on anything, but he says something like dopamine goes up and therefore it's beneficial. And that would be an Aesop fallacy. So I'm not sure if you make a similar argument like that, or
no. The natural moral realism gets rid of the oughts. Like if you just go to the Stanford Encyclopedia, go down, there's Cornell realism, and there's one Jackson realism, I think is where it is, and it goes through how you can get rid of the oughts in a systematic way and just take them out. So you don't need the oughts at all for an objective model morality. But again, the Aesop problem and G.E. Moore's open question argument apply equally to natural and supernatural. It doesn't apply specifically to natural. It applies equally to both. There's no more or less.
Okay, so but natural moral realism would make the claim that you ought to objectively do certain things, right? Like you would agree with principles like you ought not to murder or you ought not to steal, right?
They're secondary principles. So morality is purely descriptive. If you kill somebody, that's immoral. It's just a descriptive statement. And then from that descriptive statement, you can say, if you want to be moral, you ought not do that. But the ought is irrelevant to the morality. It's like it's immoral whether you ought to do it or not.
Okay, well, where would be the grounding of the immorality of doing such a thing?
It's a description of reality, of the morality. So if you say something is heavy, that's a description of its gravity. So you can have moral statements be descriptive without any kind of oughts. Oughts are secondary. It's like,
Well,
I weigh, I ought to lose weight. The ought doesn't change the fact of your weight. So it can be an objective fact that you weigh this amount, regardless of your opinion on what you ought to do. So morality, you can say it is immoral to kill people, and that's just a fact of reality. And your ought statement after that is just irrelevant. You don't need the oughts for morality.
Well, morality is wouldn't morality be an ought statement? How can it be an is?
No.
I just want to find out why you think it's an is statement. Is this like a hypothetical, categorical, imperative kind of argument?
No. So Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, the definition of normative ethics, they give you a formal definition of what it means. There is no ought required anywhere in that. That's just an assumption most theists have about morality. It's not actually at all required.
Well, could you link me to the Stanford Encyclopedia?
Yes, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, definition of normative morality.
Yeah, because that's actually very interesting. The idea that morality can be based on is because as traditionally known, for instance, if you go around on an example.
Yeah, that's the actual page itself is the definition of morality. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The definition. What?
Well, the question would be, why is it immoral to go around to steal or commit murder? Like, why is it immoral to, do an action, like do a so-called immoral action? Like, why is that the case?
It's descriptive. It's like, why are you heavy? Well, because it corresponds to something in reality. So immorality and morality are a thing in reality, and it corresponds to those, whether your action did or did not do those things.
Right, fair point. But why is it? But maybe the question shouldn't be why is it, but how is it the case?
That depends on the model. There's lots of different models. My particular model says that morality is an emergent property like fitness. And so it's a feature of the world, kind of like how animals are more fit if they can survive in more environments. It's more immoral if it moves us further away from the best of all possible worlds. So you just create a principle, and the principle, if it corresponds to reality, is what would measure whether or not the action is moral or immoral.
And how would you support that?
I make novel testable predictions. I have like a whole papers on it, lots of videos.
Okay, so as far as morality goes, so going back to the topic of a description, like if you say this thing is heavy, like you're grounding it, like how this is heavy. Can you empirically prove it? In the same sense, how would you empirically prove that a certain action is wrong? I guess.
I make novel testable predictions, just like the weight. I'd say that if there is this objective morality, then we can see it through all species that have a certain intellectual capability to be aware of the principle. And if we discovered other alien species, they'd all come to these same conclusions. And as we grow with our intellectual and technological capabilities, our moral intuitions will change in this way. There's lots of different predictions you can make on that front.
So morality can oftentimes vary completely differently. To say that it's grounded in humans wouldn't make sense, because once again,
right. I'm not going to say it's grounded in human. I'm saying it exists in reality, independent of humans, and it affects humans. Right.
So again, I'm not sure if you exactly answered this question, but how is it grounded?
Like fitness is a thing that exists objectively in the universe. There are certain organisms that can survive in more environments than others. That isn't grounded in humans, that's grounded in reality. So morality is an emergent property of reality, like fitness. So it's true independent of humans. We just experience that property of reality just like every other animal.
Yeah, but then it's not an ought, because the ought is a totally different thing from what you're talking about. Remember, ought is not a problem, because what you're again referring to is
remember, oughts are gone in my model. Oughts are gone in many models. You don't need oughts for morality.
Yeah, but I would argue that morality, for instance, is based on oughts. I mean, I'm looking at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It is saying that morality is based on odds from here.
No, it doesn't. I actually have the quote saved specifically of where it actually gives the definition of normative morality, and it specifically does not entail an ought. I can find that for you and email it if you want, but it does not at all. And there are many, like just going to the naturalistic moral realism, it specifically gives like 10 examples of things that don't use ought. So no, it does not require that at all.
All right. You guys, y'all ready to kick it over to Q&A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of unfinished stuff here. I mean, I did kind of want to, because I did kind of.
Here it is. Here it is. In the normative sense, morality refers to a code of conduct that would be accepted by anyone who meets a certain intellectual and volitional conditions. That's it. There's no oughts at all.
Kind of a red herring. That's not exactly what we're talking about, though.
So normative means the ought-based morality. So you can have a ought-based morality without the oughts, essentially. So you don't need the oughts to have an objective moral realism.
How does the Stanford Encyclopedia prove that statement through a logical argument?
Through the other lots of pages that they have there. I'm just giving the conclusion here, so you'd have to read the paper.
Yeah, I would have to read the paper, and once I read the paper, it would be an interesting discussion to continue upon. This is obviously a much longer discussion than we currently would have, but I guess to wrap up what we're talking about, it's TJump is making the claim. So I brought up this problem, and he's making the claim that it's actually not based on odds. It's morality is actually based on is, and I would have to read the various papers on that. Honestly, I have a lot to learn on this, and and yeah, I'd be happy to read the papers that you sent. Can you send it to me on email?
It's the same one. The definition of morality. Did you find it?
No, but it references papers, right? Where did you send?
They're at the bottom. They're at the references at the very bottom of the page.
Where did you send it?
You want me to send you the link to the definition of morality on Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy?
Yeah, and I'd like to
Stanford.
And tune in next week for the debate, Ought We Believe in Oughts, coming up next Thursday, TJump versus Greg.
All right, I put it in the private chat.
All right, we have a lot of questions, and I'm not sure we'll get to all of them, but I'll try. So we'll go ahead and jump into that, and then, yeah, I'd love to host you guys on that discussion if you want, or TJump, feel free to do it on your channel or whatever. But so we'll jump into our Q&A section here. I'm going to push all the Super Chats to the front of the line just because they paid. And we will go ahead and start with Steven Steen, that nasty guy. He says, I know Tom isn't above it, but how far has Skylar fallen? He is now debating a preteen plus a flat earther. Converse always looking fly.
Not a preteen.
Oh, Steven.
I mean, he's even copying my chair, too. What is this? God.
Look at this.
I'm very
Every day.
at them calling me a preteen because, first of all, do I sound like a preteen? Like I just genuinely.
No,
You sound like a teenager.
Greg is a teenager, and to be on here debating, that's pretty good. But Steven Steen, he's a troll. He's a nasty guy, man. You gotta watch.
He wasn't being serious. He
yeah,
actually respects you a lot.
Yeah, he's just joking.
He doesn't respect praise, though, but he does respect you.
All right, so our next super chat from Spart344 says, Converse, for praise, I had a debate with music analysts on this very topic last night. He was more coherent than your opening. I don't know. I'm thinking that,
I guess, yeah, that's the end of the story in that one. You know, by praise's argument, we can just throw it out the window. Okay, whatever.
All right, thanks so much for that. Stupid Horror Energy, $5 super chat. Thanks so much. Says, does praise have anything more than anecdotes, preferably an amputee that was healed by prayer?
Yeah, actually, there is a documented case of that, and just give me 1 second. I'll pull it up, or I'll give it to you after. Go ahead, Converse.
So led with that one today. That would have been a good one.
All right,
Definitely.
Citrafreda Sarabia, thanks for being here as usual. $5 super chat says, TJump, praise 1. Prove parapsychology wrong because it exists as a science. So science is wrong. It's pseudo. Says science? Apparently not. Yes or no?
Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, as I've addressed in the opening. There's lots and lots of papers published on lots of different fields. Most of them are not accepted because they are not repeatable. They don't convince the consensus. There are papers that inspiring philosophy quotes about nonsense about how the universe is in a hologram and we're in the matrix. You can publish papers on anything pretty much as long as you know how to write a paper. That isn't evidence it's true. So you'd have to actually have it affect the consensus, have the people who are experts in the field verify the information. That's why you're publishing it in a journal in the first place. It's not like you published and you're done and you have evidence of your conclusion. That's not how it works. You publish papers to convince the consensus. The consensus have looked at Praise's evidence. They find it completely unreliable, which is why the vast majority of experts reject it. The fact that it's published in a journal doesn't make it good evidence. The fact that it's accepted by the consensus is what makes it good evidence. So if Praises can convince the consensus, that's great evidence. So that's why I was interested in him finding his quote where he's mentioned that in the paper somewhere.
All right, thanks so much for that.
It's Smith. It's Smith Wigglesworth with the guy with the regenerated leg or whatever you want to call it. But also,
Smith Wigglesworth.
I was going to say that's a very interesting name.
Smith
But,
Wigglesworth.
Tom's wrong on that. The consensus that is it's a fallacy. It's becomes a argument from when you have the authority. So it's an argument from authority at that point.
No, it's not. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, fallacies, number 9, argument from authority. Arguments from authority are only fallacious when you're not quoting true authorities, like the consensus.
And there's experimental proof of that anyway.
Man, that's a tough one to not crack a smile at. Wigglesworth, bro. Smith Wigglesworth. It's almost like I was reading one of the Norse mythology books, and it's written by a guy named Snorri. That's his first name. I thought that was awesome. Snorri Wigglesworth would make a really good name. So, all right, our next super chat, 5 A's from Virillion, says, what does Praise think of the published peer-reviewed paper that there is a black hole in the center of the Earth?
I have to look at it, so I can't make a claim on that. But I will say appealing to a consensus is a conflict of interest, so that's why it should be repudiated.
All right, thanks
It's
so much.
the opposite of that, but okay.
All right, we have T Tubin, $10 super chat. Thanks so much for that. Says, no question, just thanks for bringing great discussions. Thanks to all the debaters.
Hear, hear.
Well, thanks so much to you. Stupid Horror Energy, another $5 super chat, says the physical distance of the ratio of the diameter of a circle to its circumference is an infinite number.
Pi.
I think maybe that could have been a reference to infinities.
Greg said infinities are impossible. She's saying here's an infinity.
Wait, what? I didn't hear the question. Can you say it?
Pi is an infinity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think that. No, I'm trying to say something different. Okay. Pi is a description of something, not a tangible set of events that are occurring. I mean, like, you just conflated two different things. Like, you're saying pi describes something and it can be infinite. But when I'm talking about an actual infinite, I'm talking about something a little bit different. I'm saying an infinite series of events cannot occur. The key to, like, this is description versus, no, okay, sorry. I'm going off on that. This is events versus a description of something, which is pi.
All right, thanks so much for that. Next $5 super chat from Gabriel K. says, Is praise smoky? If so, I sense a lot of doubt and depression in his voice. Promise you it can all make sense without God. So maybe that was just more of a comment. I don't know is praise smoky? I'm not sure about that part. Like, is that
Yeah, I'm Smokey, guys. Yep, that's me.
Okay. I didn't know if there was something deeper to that I don't understand. But
No,
I think I like praise better than Smokey.
all right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, our next super chat was from General Balzac. He just had a $5 super chat, no question there. But he does have another question, which See if I can't pull it out here. All right. It was just okay. Here it is. We might need some slow mo to. Okay, so that was just really a question about the chat. All right. Next, $5 super chat from Jamie Russell says, "What argument? Not I know a guy. Do the atheists have to deny the prophecies of Daniel if they don't know why? Are they so sure it's invalid?"
Well, may I just jump in? I think that would be, I guess, switching the burden of proof. The burden of proof, I guess, would be to prove, that Daniel's a story not for the atheists, to prove that it's not. Like, I'm not taking any sides here. I think, but I do think that's shifting the burden of proof a little bit.
Skylar knows more about Daniel than I do. I don't even know what they are.
Yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to the question. I'm sorry. I was doing something. On my phone.
That's unacceptable.
Yeah, God's such a bully.
That's unacceptable.
Something about Daniel and their
I'm deducting 5
prophecy.
points from your side.
Yeah, they asked about how can we not? Why don't we trust the prophecies of Daniel? How can we refute them without?
Yeah, because they didn't work. They didn't come true. I mean, you can go watch Dr. Josh Bowen's video on Digital Hammurabi. He's got a detailed breakdown of how these prophecies did not happen. Yeah, that's why.
All right.
It's very simple.
Sunflower, $5. If Planck proposed that electromagnetic radiation only exists in discrete spaghetti packets, would that have discredited the underlying core theory? I'm not sure that one's too.
No. Like, you could say that it's anything you want it to, and if it makes testable predictions, you get the credit for it. So it wouldn't have undermined anything, even if he said it was magical God being. If he's able to make testable predictions, that counts.
All right. Gabriel K, $5 says, "I don't get the hype about meta-analyses. It's the laziest type of research, prone to so much bias, so much cherry picking."
I disagree. I mean, it's universally accepted amongst most scientists that meta-analyses are the most, reliable way of going about it, because what they do is, let's just say you have a cross-sectional study, right? Like a cross-sectional survey of what people think about something. Awesome, right? But that still wouldn't prove the assertion. But now let's say you have 200 of those studies, which all confirm the hypothesis that people love tigers. 1,000 cross-sectional surveys, which say that, and 5 which say people hate tigers, right? And a meta-analysis would just point the fact that you have a cross-sectional survey, you just multiply that by 1,000, and you have a meta-analysis. So it's just basically one study, just, I guess, even better, because it's just a review of all of the studies to see whether they're invalid. Because if there's a meta-analysis of something going on, I'm sorry if I'm going on a tangent too much, and then there's one study, I could just cherry pick studies and then say, here are 2 studies which prove my assertion. But then there's a meta-analysis which says, no, that's not true. So meta-analyses are really the defining factor to whether an assertion can be trusted or not scientifically, I think.
All right. Anybody disagree or want to add to that? Or are we moving on?
Well, yeah, I think the point wasn't that meta-analyses are bad. It's just that meta-analyses are only good when they have verifiable science behind them. So if you have a meta-analysis of a bunch of physical tests that have been done to come to a conclusion, that's great. But usually when you have that many physical tests, you don't need a meta-analysis. It's just science accepts it. So you don't have a meta-analysis of physical data of protons, because we already know the protons work. So meta-analyses are usually limited to cases of things that are not well supported, to try and bolster support for them or something along those lines. They're not usually very reliable at convincing anybody in hard science kinds of ways.
Yeah, I would agree, actually.
All right. Meerkat SK5 sent in a $15 super chat with no question. So thanks so much for the support. We appreciate it. Just had a super chat come in from Jupiter Darman. Says, for praise, Are miracles from other religions, i.e., miracles in the name of Allah, proof of those other gods? Just looking for consistency.
Yeah, I would say that the devil is a great deceiver, and I would say they're demonic. Even see, what people don't understand is that yes, even the dark side, we call the dark side the devil, Satan, his workers in his kingdom, they can do miracles for people all the time. So it's not just God that does miracles. There is also demonic powers as well.
All right, so we're moving out of super chats to our regular questions from the chat. Korag Nightwolf, first question for praise. Where's the evidence that Jesus cured the person's laryngitis and not voodoo?
Well, that's actually a fair point. But even if it was voodoo, you would have to say it transcends natural paradigm materialist dogma. So I would say that's a fair point. But I would say that maybe the context behind it and the prayer would probably be the best explanation, but we couldn't prove it, I wouldn't say per se.
All right, next question.
Voodoo is considered a natural thing, so it wouldn't actually go outside of the natural phenomenon. It's just an unknown natural thing, so that wouldn't work.
Natural the gaps.
Voodoo, they consider it to be an unknown natural force.
Are you serious? Are you saying
Yes.
voodoo is a natural force?
Yes, the people who worship voodoo think it's a force
They're
of nature.
spirits. They're poltergeists. No.
No.
All right.
Okay.
So our next question comes from Samuel Lil Jom. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it says, if the specific arrangement of matter in order to convey something is language, does the arrangement of something in reality come from God? If so, what is that? Do I need to try and reread that one, or
maybe, yeah.
If the specific arrangement of matter in order to convey something is language, does the arrangement of something in reality come from God? If so, what is that? So I'm not really sure who that's to, but
yeah,
it sounds like the design argument.
There's a couple of things that I would say. Language itself is non-physical. Even if it has symbols, these symbols are, again, non-physical. They're immaterial. They convey they convey some type of language that comes from a language giver. So I think that's the argument anyway I would give. But Greggy, you're welcome to jump on in there.
Could you kind of repeat the question for me again? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who it's really to, but it says, if the specific argument of matter in order to convey something, or I'm sorry, excuse me, let me start over. If the specific arrangement of matter in order to convey something is language, does the arrangement of something in reality come from God? If so, what is that? You can just say skip if you don't get it.
All right, skip.
All right.
Didn't really understand that.
So the Maverick question, why do we seek meaning if our purpose is solely survival? Nihilism should surely be so much more prevalent if there were a reality.
I would say we just create our own purpose. I think, usually typically in life, you talk to different people, they have their own purposes they believe in, right? If you're talking about like something even like deeper, like evolutionary, like a biological purpose, I guess it's survival to a certain extent. But I think as we have more freedoms and we evolve and things are more complex in our society, and we have the ability to have time to actually desire things greater than just survival, we create a different type of purpose. I mean, you look at not that long ago, 100, let's see, 1800s, 1700s. People weren't living, depending on where you were, like average age was like 30 by the time you would die. You didn't have much of a life at that point. So your basic everyday life was survival. and living. But yeah, I think when we talk about things now, it's more about your own purpose you create.
I mean, I personally think from a metaphysical perspective, I don't think it's that interesting of a discussion. I think the most interesting discussion would be the existential / and or epistemological, I guess you could say, not really, interpretation of it, which is it actually beneficial to have a nihilistic set of beliefs or a Christian set of beliefs? And that gets into a really interesting discussion. I have a few papers on it. Like Dostoevsky, this guy on my profile, he argued that it's necessary because nihilism has its own bad consequences, like in the Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment, and Demons too. But yeah, that's a topic for a different discussion. But I think it is a very interesting question. Yeah.
So I just noticed that James or whoever made this background put at the top where debaters come to die. That must be like a Skylar fiction reference.
I used to say where Christian apologetics come to die on the channel.
That's pretty funny. I just realized that.
Oh man!
All right, so a couple more here. So the same person says Samuel Lilholm says, can parts with a purpose systems like language which convey meaning come from anything other than intelligence? If so, where and how? Put it simply.
Boom.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just a physical force. So, for example, if you have a divot in the beach and the water rolls up on the beach, then the worms will sense it, or the bacteria will, and they'll just sit there and occupy the branch. It's not just worms. Any kind of chemical process like crystals will read the divot by just its physical properties, will sit there and accumulate, and you will build up sand crystals. So any kind of physical distinction that can be interacted with by a second or third source is a language in a way. There's no difference between crystals forming on a beach and English. It's just a different kind of reading system. There's nothing about it at all. It's just Shannon information theory, the definition of information. Any stochastic system can produce information.
Yeah, and I disagree. I would say that languages have grammar. They have different laws and rules to it. And I would say no, that's not part of what Tom's talking about.
Yeah, it is. It's rules of physics. It's written in physics.
Thanks so much for that. Joshua Vickers says, ask TJump if he understands the definition. By definition, he failed. LOL.
Definitions are not evidence. You have to actually show your definition is true. So if you I define computers as my left foot, and you define computers as a processing machine. Like, one of us is going to be right, one of us is going to be wrong. You can show that. Like, it's not. You have to show your definition is true, not just make up a definition.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Greg.
I would kind of disagree there, because definitions are just, things which we would go off of, which we would have an argument about. If you're arguing one definition and some other guy's arguing some other definition, then it's not really a debate, because you have to assume certain things in an argument in order for it to make sense. Because if I say a bunch of words and I say a bunch of definitions, like the definition of sparkling water, crackers, aircraft controllers, and then TJump has a different definition of it, and then I'm talking about a different definition of it, then we can't really debate. We have to assume certain things in order to logically, make or check if something is sound or if it logically makes sense.
That's only in the definition. But if you say this definition exists and did something in the world, well, then that's where the definition can disagree. So you have one label for this thing, and I say that label and those properties are wrong. So that's where you'd have to actually show it. So it's not just the definition. You're claiming there's a definition and it did something in the world.
Well, then the problem is not in the definition. The problem is in the thing.
Right. So if you say a rabbit knocked that cup over, I say, no, it didn't. I'm saying a lizard did. And I'm just going to call that new lizard a rabbit or whatever. Then the problem is which one of us is right. It's not about the definition itself. It's about which one of us is right. So you have to show your definition is correct. It corresponds.
We might have misunderstood. I might have misunderstood what you were saying. Yeah, that's maybe where we were going around in circles. I didn't quite understand. I apologize.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Our next, the Maverick had a follow up to their question. Says, why do humans become depressed and suicidal when they have no meaning? If nihilism is a RW.
I don't think either of us are nihilists, Tom or I.
I mean, nihilism, feelings and logic have nothing to do with one another. You can have great
Yeah.
feelings while being completely illogical. So, why people get depressed has nothing to do with whether nihilism is true or not. Like, people can believe in a God even if there's no God, and they can be really happy about death, even though they're not going to experience anything. Like, your feelings do not necessarily correspond to reality. So, the truth of a position has nothing to do with whether or not it makes people feel good or bad.
He might be referring to. He might be referring to he was making. I think there's a couple of statistics which show that nihilistic people tend to be more likely to be depressed and more likely to commit suicide. I think there's a few papers on that. That a lack of meaning leads to lethargy, suicide, depression, things like that. I think maybe that's what he was talking about. But I don't know if you guys are nihilists, though.
Right. So, but that was my point: is that the belief itself, whether or not it makes you feel good or bad, has nothing to do with its truth. The truth and the feeling you get from the belief has nothing to do with its truth.
Yeah, I agree. But I think but then again, that gets into metaphysics versus existentialism. I think he's making an existential point. You're making a ontological point, which is like, should you believe in something if it's ontologically true, or should you believe in it if it makes you feel good? That's a different debate, though.
All right. Neko Blask asks Greg if he agrees with praise that spontaneous remission isn't a thing.
I have no research on that.
Yeah, and my point is, I think Tom was just jumping to conclusions. He needs to demonstrate the spontaneous remission is the same in cancer for laryngitis, which I actually have part of it right now anyway. It's kind of weird.
This the spontaneous remission thing. I might have to disagree with Praise here. I don't think there's good enough evidence for a psychopathology. No, what was it called again?
Well, he's talking about the miracle where the guy's voice got healed right now. That's where he's.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about. I'm not particularly sure about that. I think. I think it would be kind of the gap to insert God into that, but yeah, I really need to do more research into this topic.
Yeah, if you look at the backstory, it becomes not the God of the gaps, because you learn that there's no wiggling room to push in any type of naturalistic phenomena.
Aliens. Maybe it was aliens. I mean, maybe aliens came down and zapped his throat.
Boom.
There we go.
Our
And
next
magical technology. It's not supernatural. If it was aliens, it'd be very natural.
Well, then,
what are you talking about?
No, it would need to surpass natural paradigm. That's the point.
No, it doesn't. Like you can heal people purely naturally if you have alien technology.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question is for praise. It's, I don't know if you pronounce this Zon, but it says, please ask praise if he's a flat earther, because he sounds like one. I just want to know.
I'm more of a pear earther, like Neil deGrasse.
All right. Thanks so much, praise. Our next question is from Flum666. Says, how can a non-physical have any effect on the physical world? And if your God is outside the universe, how can it have any effect on the universe?
Yeah, I think that's a canard that God is outside of the universe. No, that's not what we believe. We believe he transcends the universe. There's a difference. But he can be within this realm and different dimensions at the same time. He's a multi-dimensional being. So I'll let Greg, if he wants to jump on in there, go ahead.
Sorry, what was the question? I was in the bathroom.
That's fine. It says, how can a non-physical thing have an effect on the physical world? If your God's outside the universe, how can it have any effect on the universe?
Because it's not just physical things that can cause physical beings to exist. I mean, I'm not really sure. Like, I don't think there would be any evidence to suggest that They have to be of the exact same category, as those categories are arbitrary as well, like physical, non-physical. It's not like and I'm sure a non-physical thing can cause a physical thing to exist if it's quote unquote omnipotent, so to speak.
All
And
right.
there's no defeater to say that it can't.
So the next question is actually for you, Greg. It says it's from Shusa. It says, Greg, are you misunderstanding S5 in Rasmussen Proust's contingency argument? S5 says that something that is possible is necessary possible, not necessary. Something that is possible is necessarily possible, not necessary.
No, I think he's got it right. Like Rasmussen and Plantinga's modal logic is that if it's possible to have a necessary being, then that means it's not possible, it's necessary. So they're confusing the definitions of possibility. They make it this strange use of the word possibility. So if it's possible there's a necessary being, then by their definition, it's not possible for there to not be a necessary being. I actually asked Ben Arbor about that in my live debate with him.
Yeah, that was interesting because last time I spoke with Ben, he said that you didn't really accept S5 as being fully legit. You still don't really
made up.
Okay.
It's just made up language game, not accepted.
Awesome. I was just wondering your opinion. All right, Greg, did you have anything to add to that about S5 logic and the Rasmussen Proust's contingency argument?
So I'm correct. This is about modal logic.
Yeah, they're saying that that S5 says that something that is possible is necessarily possible and not necessary.
S5 is a kind of modal logic.
I mean, yeah, I would accept that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So CM Gould, our next question says, question for praise. Did God know you needed to give evidence for this discussion? Why didn't he give you any?
Oh!
What was the question?
Burn.
He just sunk my ship.
He said, if God knew that you needed evidence for this discussion, why didn't he give you any?
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe it was just telepathically through some aliens. I don't know.
All right. Thanks so much. Next question from James Hogue says, question for praise. Do Matt Powell and Smokey Saint believe in the same God you do?
Oops, I was on mute. As far as I know, yes.
All right. Dale Wilson says, can we get praise to define the word prescriptive?
It means to prescribe.
That's good.
All right. Let's just get to a couple more questions and get out of here. All right. Uriah Christensen says, ask praise if he believes in an anti-foundationalist coherentist needs to account for laws of logic.
Yes, they do. Or I would say that you can see that you have an inferior worldview. Otherwise,
all right.
Who's an anti-foundationalist? Like, so I'm all the models I prescribed were foundationalists, and so we have the foundationalists, but we also account for the laws of logic as just descriptive things humans made up to describe reality. So most philosophers, like, the definition of logic is just as a formal language made up by humans. Everyone accounts for logic just fine without a god.
No, but see, logic isn't reduced to brain, so no, by definition, that couldn't even be the case.
Again, you're confusing the words and the things they're describing. So the words that we made up for logic are just in the head. Logic, law of identity, law of logic, law of non-contradiction, all in our heads. But they describe things that exist independently.
So, are you okay? So, do humans have brains?
Yes.
Are brains physical?
Yes.
Is logical physical? Is logic physics?
Yes, logic is just the ideas that exist in our brains. They're physical ideas, physical neurons firing, just chemical.
Well, then, can you show me what it tastes like, what it smells like, and can you show me what's the texture of it, and what is it?
You can literally weigh it. It's just a certain kind of chemical function in the brain.
You can weigh the laws of logic?
Yeah.
How much does the law of non-contradiction weigh?
When you have that idea, you have a certain chemical firing in the brain. It has a certain weight. You could literally measure it.
I want to see it. Well, can you show me it? I want to see what it looks like. What does it look like?
sure, once I get a detailed enough fMRI machine, I could definitely do that for you.
All right, let's move into our speed round of questions here. We did have a super chat come in from Maya Asburn that says, "Praise, seriously, your opening. Do you believe that Ouija boards work? And congratulations to Skylar and TJump. The debate was over after Praise's ridiculous opening."
Oh,
Burn.
yeah.
Burned you.
Yeah, I actually do believe Ouija boards have been shown to have some results into the parapsychological realm, and I just think people have a bias. They really haven't done research on it, so I mean that's their fault, not mine. So I'll just leave it there.
All right, thanks so much. Let's answer these last few very quickly so we can get to a few more. Alex Gordon, for praise. Unfortunately, your argument says the word necessary doesn't demonstrate that God is a necessary precondition for the laws of logic. Demonstrate necessity.
Preconditions for intelligibility. So you need intelligibility to even operate anything rational off of.
All right, thanks so much. Critical Chris says, how is the PSR valid if it states the only two options are contingent or necessary, even though a brute fact or an infinite regress are logically possible?
That wouldn't logically invalidate it. If an infinite regress, I argue that it was not possible, due to mathematical problems such as what an actual infinite minus an actual infinite would be. What was the second thing you mentioned?
It said
Brute facts.
if PSR is valid, if it states that the only two options are contingent or necessary, even though a brute fact or an infinite regress are logically possible.
So brute facts could be explained either necessarily or contingently, and a brute fact is something that currently has no explanation, not something that by necessity does not have an explanation. So yeah,
it can be either actually in philosophy. Either one always apply.
All right.
And I would need such. Yeah.
Sorry. So our last, it's actually a statement from Adam Albilia. He wanted to say, statement for Greg. I enjoyed your honest discussion with TJump. Hoping for a follow-up soon. TJump, sharp as always. Skylar, first time, not dominant, but still great. Praise. Well, at least you're not DD.
Oh, gosh.
All right, so that looks like it's it for us. Is there anything anybody wants to add before we take off?
Yes, there's an after show in Smokies, and I'm probably going to try to get over there. I recommend anyone try to get over there. It's going to be pretty cool.
All right. Anything from the other side?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us on. Thanks for Skylar for coming on.
Thanks for Skylar for co-moderating with me.
This was a good time.
Yeah, it was a good discussion.
This is a good discussion. I hope to get more info on TJump's moral theory, as it sounds very interesting, and I might have to reconsider some of my views on normative ethics. And this was a really interesting discussion. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and take off. Just hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Press the like button if you like this type of discussion. It lets us know. And thanks everybody in the chat and for the debaters for being here. And as usual, keep sifting the reasonable from the unreasonable.